Okay. So, in chapter 12 and 13, yesterday we explained who and what the Beinoni is. And essentially the Beinoni is somebody who practices self-control. He's somebody who has a normal nefesh habahamit, a normal human experience of wanting and desiring everything this world has to offer. But he has such power of self-control, using what we said yesterday was moyach shalat al halev, the mind controls the heart. And because the mind is more powerful than the heart, then even if his heart really, really wants to do something, if it's not the right thing, he controls it. Even if he really wants to say something, doesn't say it if it's not the right thing to say. And even a thought, the moment he realizes that the thought in his head is not a good thought, he pushes it out of his mind, and he brings in light to push away darkness. He brings in good thoughts, brings in good ideas from his godly soul, and that gets rid of the negativity that's from his animal soul. So he's not like a tzaddik, because a tzaddik never even has bad thoughts pop into his mind, because his whole animal soul is either inactive or his animal soul is serving the godly soul. So even the idea of something popping into his mind that's negative doesn't even happen for the tzaddik, because where's it going to pop in from? The animal soul is not active. But the Beinoni, his animal soul is very active, because he's a regular, normal human being. So negative thoughts could pop into his head. It's the way it is. But the moment he realizes this is not the right thing, he pushes it out of his mind. Yes, we remember this? Yes. And the other element of the Beinoni we said is where he gets the inspiration to do this. To do what? The inspiration to put up this fight all day long. An internal struggle. It's a real fight he's got to put up with. And we explained that the Beinoni has another part of his serving Hashem, and that is his prayer. During his prayer, he takes that time to really get his godly soul excited by thinking about the greatness of Hashem, learning first before prayer, he learns some Chassidus, learns about the greatness of Hashem, and then once he understands the greatness of Hashem, or some idea within godliness, he starts to think about it, and he thinks about it so much that it becomes real for him, and it's so real for him that he starts to feel for it. And then during prayer, at least, his godly soul is activated, and he has full, real feelings for Hashem, even though right after prayer his animal soul is back active, so he doesn't feel those feelings anymore. But because he felt them during prayer, it helps him and inspires him the rest of the day to put up a fight with his animal soul. Remember this? Okay. That's the Beinoni. Now the Beinoni, at this point, seems like a very, very lofty level. Somebody who's 24/7 in control of himself. It's a serious level, if you think about it. Someone who's 24/7 in control of himself, the second he realizes a bad thought, he pushes it out of his mind, never utters a bad word because he's always in control of himself, never does the wrong thing because he's always 100% in control of himself. If he has a free minute and he could learn Torah, he doesn't waste his time, he goes and learns Torah. Because I'm just lying on the couch because I'm lazy, that's the animal soul doing that. And he doesn't let that happen. This is a very lofty level, right?
Yes, but how do you think? How do you do other stuff when you're thinking only that?
Say it again?
Let's say I'm in a test. I'm doing a test and I'm doing my test, but all I'm thinking about is how I'm going to push away my animal soul's thoughts.
Right, so that's what I said before. When you push out the thoughts, he doesn't push out the thoughts. He actually brings in light. Right, to get rid of the dark and get rid of it. So it's not as if you're fighting your animal soul's thoughts. You're just introducing new positive thoughts and thinking about something else. You don't fight your animal soul's thoughts. You just control yourself to think about something else. So if you're thinking, let's say something is distracting you during your prayer, let's say, instead of trying to fight that thought, the bad thought that's coming through during prayer, you end up just hyper focusing and doing more focus on your prayer, and it completely ignores the negative thought, even as it's trying to get itself into your head. You understand what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm telling you. This is a very lofty level, right? It's a very, very high level, this Beinoni, right now. That's what it seems, right? And it would seem like the Beinoni is out of what we can reach. That's what it seems like right now, right? Because we describe this Beinoni as somebody who's 24/7 in control. We said before in chapter 11 that if someone once a week or once a month gives into his animal soul, does a small little sin in his thought, has a sinful thought, boom, he's a Rasha. So it's a very lofty level, this Beinoni business, right?
He does that thing, but it doesn't make him a Rasha.
He's a Rasha, right?
For this second, that thought, he made him a Rasha. But when he restarts, it's like when he was Benoni.
Okay, that's a good question. So I want to address that today. That's what we're going to talk about today. Because before I address that, that question came up before. You mentioned the same question yesterday, and I said we're going to get to chapter 14, so I am going to address the question today. But before we get there, I just want to make the point that later in chapter 28, the Alter Rebbe writes that if only you would be a Beinoni. Halavai Beinoni, which means to say that even as the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us that our goal in life is to try to fight to become a Beinoni, the Alter Rebbe also understands that it's very difficult to be a Beinoni. And you'd be so lucky if you were actually a full-on Beinoni. Why? And this kind of answers your question. The Beinoni, it's not just a question of what he's doing right now. It's a question of what kind of person is he right now. Right now, are you the kind of person who might give in once a month? That even if you're not giving in right now, but because you're the kind of person that would, then you're not a Beinoni. The Beinoni is the kind of person who right now would never give in. Even if 5 minutes ago he gave in, and even if in 20 minutes from now it might happen that he will give in, but right now he's the kind of person.
He has the thought in his mind to never give in.
And for real, he's truly, right now in the moment, he's the kind of person who would never give in. Now, thinking of it that way, to be a Beinoni your whole life is an extremely difficult thing. Extremely difficult. But on the other hand, it's not impossible. Why is it not impossible? Because at every single moment, you can decide, I want to be a Beinoni right now. Why can't you? To be a tzaddik and say, right now I want to turn on the feelings and I'm only going to love Hashem, you can't do that. Even for a Beinoni, to get love for Hashem, he has to do a whole hour-long prayer and thinking and meditation and learning and discovering of thinking about Hashem. So finally he can feel something for Hashem and feel like Hashem is truly watching him or he truly loves Hashem. So you can't just turn on your feelings for Hashem any moment. It takes work. And certainly to be a tzaddik, to have 24/7 feelings for Hashem, that's obviously something that's out of what you can actually reach. But what is something that you could reach any single second in the world? Any time of your life. Stop you right now. What are you capable of doing? Right now, at this very moment, you are capable of controlling your thought, speech, and action. And there's never a moment when you can't control that. And that's why, even though it's true that being a Beinoni is very difficult, and to be a Beinoni 24/7, to be the kind of person who never will and never did do anything wrong, very, very high level. But at the same time, every single moment, you are capable of turning on the Beinoni. At any moment. Because there's never a time when you can't control what you think. And there's never a time when you can't control what you're saying. And there's never a time when you can't control what you're doing. So because there's at any moment, you're capable of controlling yourself, therefore, the objective in your life is to try to be a Beinoni as much as you possibly can. This is the words of the Alter Rebbe in English, in the Hebrew. I want to read this because it's so beautiful. The Alter Rebbe says like this: Midas HaBeinoni, the level of the Beinoni, he midas kol adam. This is the measure of every man. Every person is capable. V'achareh, and striving after this level of Beinoni, kol adam yumshach. That's what you should be drawn to. What should you be aiming for in your life? What you're aiming for in your life is to try to maximize your self-control. You're running to push for the level of Beinoni. You're not pushing to be the level of tzaddik where you don't want to do sin. Not happening. Don't even try go there. Because you're not going to get to the point where you don't want to sin anymore. Because you're not going to get rid of your animal soul. You're a human being. You're a regular person. So what are you trying to do? Self-control. Sorry?
A lot of people came from Rasha to Tzaddik also.
Not in this kind. It's possible it happens, but not very often.
A lot of
People do go from Rasha to Beinoni. Yes, it could happen. We're going to talk about that soon. That it is possible that someone could go from Beinoni to Tzaddik. That's not something that the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us. Okay, well, I guess I'll say it now. The Alter Rebbe basically says that becoming a tzaddik from a Beinoni is something Hashem gives you as a present, as a gift. Someone who's been in a Beinoni for so long that Hashem might grant him a gift from heaven that he can become a tzaddik, and he no longer has any feelings from his animal soul, or his animal soul is serving his godly soul, so he doesn't have that selfishness that we all have. That's not something you can create. It's not something that you as a human being can get to the point where you've changed your inside so far that you have no more selfishness. It's just not human. It's not normal. It's not regular. Hashem can grant someone as a gift like that. Right? Sorry?
Okay.
Are you following?
Yeah.
Right? So what is the aim of my life, of the average Jew's life, right? This whole book is meant for the average Jew. The word Beinoni means the middle, but you can also translate it as average. What can we expect of the average person? Right? Sorry? Yeah, anybody, anytime, anywhere.
If you look at the average Jew nowadays, you can't compare it to the average Jew.
That's fine. The question is, what can you expect of any Jew? What you can expect of every Jew is, at any moment, he's capable of controlling himself. Anybody can do that.
But that's high standards.
Fine. But that's the funny thing. Don't think of your whole life. Control myself my whole life. Don't think of it that way. Think of it right now here. Can you control yourself? Yes, so do it. In 5 minutes from now, can you control yourself again? Yes, so do it. There was a famous chassid, his name was Rabbi Nissen Nemenov. Rabbi Nissen Nemenov was a famous chassid. He was a teacher in a school first in Russia, then in Brunois. When after the war was over, many Jews left Russia, and many chassidim came to France, and they set up a little community and yeshiva in a town called Brunois. It's right outside of Paris, 45 minutes away from Paris. My grandmother was there for a while after she came out of Russia, and many other families. So there's a famous chassid and teacher, his name was Rabbi Nissen Nemenov. What's his name? And he was known that he was a Beinoni of Tanya. He was a Beinoni, this kind of person who was in self-control 24/7. You can imagine, he's a big chassid. Never mind, a tzaddik is one thing. Like a rebbe is a tzaddik, someone who has no feelings of selfishness and only has godly soul feelings. He was a regular person, but he was in self-control 24/7. That's a serious business. He's a Beinoni. Right? He's a Beinoni of the Tanya. It's a big deal. So they asked him, how do you do it? So he said to the person who asked him, it's very simple. If I asked you to control yourself for the next 5 minutes, could you do it? Next 5 minutes, can you control the way you think, the way you speak, and the way you act?
In the next 5 minutes or
for the next 5 minutes, can you do it? And the person listening said, yeah, I can control myself for the next 5 minutes. So he said, okay. So control yourself for the next 5 minutes. When those 5 minutes are over, ask yourself again, can you control yourself for the next 5 minutes? Answer is yes, so then do it. After those 5 minutes are over, ask yourself again, can you control yourself for the next 5 minutes? Answer yes, okay, so then go do it. In other words, what the Alter is telling us here is, at any moment you're capable of controlling yourself. So if you think of your whole life, can I control myself my whole life? And you look at yourself and you say, I can't do it. Okay, so you give up. Says Alter, you're doing it wrong. It's not a question of your whole life. It's a question of right now. Are you capable of controlling yourself now? Answer yes, then do it. And that's what it means to work at trying to become a Beinoni. To maximize the amount of self-control you're capable of doing. And keep on reminding yourself, am I capable of being in self-control now? Yes, then do it. You follow? And this is the first instruction. Remember I said at the beginning, when we began learning, that the first 13 chapters are going to be defining the terms. What's a tzaddik, what's a rasha, what's a Beinoni, what's klipa, what's a neshama, what's a heart, what's a love, what's a fear, right? We said we're going to go through all that. We did all that now. We know what klipa is selfishness. We know what kedusha is, surrender to Hashem. We know what a neshama is, it's a godly spark, and we know that it has a mind and a heart. And we know all the things now. And what's the first thing that the Torah tells us? Now that you know everything, you also know that at any moment you are capable of controlling yourself. So then go do that. Go do that. That's your aim in life. Your aim and goal in life is to try to maximize the amount of self-control you have. And here's another important thing, which is going to come later, but I want to say it now because it's very important. If you proved your self-control for 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes later you give in, does it take away from the fact that during those 5 minutes you fought hard and you did self-control? Of course it doesn't take away from it. And those 5 minutes was a beautiful moment that Hashem is very proud of. Even though in 10 minutes later you might not be so successful in self-control, and 10 minutes ago you weren't so successful in self-control, it doesn't take away from the fact that right now you did it. And that's what I meant when I said yesterday that a person can bounce in and outside the level of Beinoni. You can go in and out of it. Because right now in this moment, you know what? I'm taking control of my life. I'm going to control myself. 2 minutes ago I didn't. Okay, it happens, I didn't, I gave in. And maybe in tomorrow, I'm not going to be so strong and I'm going to give in. That's also possible. And when tomorrow comes, I'm going to fight again. But right now, I'm putting up a fight. I am not giving in. I'm taking control of my life. I'm taking control to make sure that I'm only doing what Hashem wants. You're capable of doing that? Do 5 minutes to Hashem. In a way, as we're going to see in later chapters, that in a way this is even more precious to Hashem than the tzaddik. Why? Why? Think why? Why would you think this is more precious than a tzaddik? Yeah. Because he's putting a real fight. We're going to learn that in later chapters. That's right. And then for every single time you're successful in that fight, Hashem is super proud. Really. Don't think, this is a very, very important thing, don't think that because later I did a sin, it undoes the fact that earlier I controlled myself. Not true. The fact that you did this sin was nefesh bahamas, was your animal soul that gave in, okay? But those 10 minutes when you really fought your nefesh bahamas, that's beautiful. And that's precious. In every moment, you have that choice. Be a Beinoni in control or give in like a Rasha. Following? Now here's the first thing, this also is another thing that the tells us in chapter 14. What's the first thing? The first tool you have to use self-control. The first line of defense. And it has to be something that's any moment. Right? In chapter 13 yesterday we said that what's the inspiration for the Beinoni to control himself all day? Was the love he felt for Hashem when he was praying, or the fear he felt for Hashem when praying, or the connection he felt to Hashem when praying, right? But to get that connection during prayer takes a lot of work. Right? It takes a whole hour long of thinking and learning and all that. Did you want to ask something before? You want to ask something before? No? Right? So that takes time. To create that love and attachment to Hashem during prayer takes a lot of work and a lot of time. And then later in the day, you can use that to inspire yourself. Right? Remember we said that yesterday? Yeah? But if we're talking about now, in chapter 14, at any moment you become a Beinoni, so if let's say this morning I didn't pray properly, so I didn't feel that attachment to Hashem, I should still have some sort of tool that can help me self-control right now, in the afternoon.
Prayer is just a tool.
It's an inspiration. It's a connection to Hashem. It's not just a tool, but the inspiration, it's a connection to Hashem, but that connection to Hashem serves as like a tool to help you self-control later. Right? But what if I don't have that tool right now? Right now it's 2 in the afternoon. I prayed already 7 o'clock this morning. And I did not feel that attachment to Hashem 7 o'clock this morning. The prayer was not so great. So that means 2 o'clock in the afternoon I can't be a Beinoni, I can't self-control? Of course I can self-control, right? Because I can always self-control. So what can I take? What inspiration can I take right there in the moment? That's true. And one of the first things we learned is you shouldn't feel like a hypocrite. Why shouldn't you feel like a hypocrite? Because why? Because you have a godly soul and you have an animal soul. And the godly soul feels one way and the animal soul feels the other way. So it's not a hypocrite, it's just two parts of you. Right? But my question now is, what's the Alter is about to tell us now, that even if you... Yeah, you want to say something? A person could do mincha to inspire him, that's true. And the inspiration he feels during his prayer to mincha could help him. But the question is like this. The sin's right in front of him right now. Right now there's a temptation for a sin. He needs to control himself right now. And he has no prayer in his memory to think of it to inspire him. So what can he do right now to help him self-control? Study. Says the Alter about this. The sin's right in front of him. He has no time. He needs something that's right there, right then. Says the Alter about this. Remember, you have a neshama. And remember, if you give into that act, that neshama you have will turn into a rasha. Do you want that to happen to you? Do you want to be a foolish rasha who gives in for a stupid sin? That thought is a thought you can have anytime, anywhere, no matter what. No matter what you felt 5 minutes ago, whether you prayed well that morning or didn't pray well that morning. This idea, do you want to be a foolish rasha right now? No. No? Then don't do it. That's the tool that everybody and anybody has at any moment, any place. Whether you prayed well, whether you didn't pray well, whether you felt good, not relevant. Right now in this moment you can choose. Do you want to be that foolish rasha? Or do you want to self-control like a Beinoni? Make the choice. And if you think of every act that way, you'll have a much better, easier time self-control. Following? Moreover, we remember before that a rasha or a klipa is someone who disconnects from Hashem, right? By saying, I exist, instead of saying self-surrender to the truth that Hashem is in charge of everything, I say, no, I do what I want, right? So it's not just that I'm in this act about to become a rasha. In this act, I'm disconnected from Hashem. So why would it be a foolish rasha who willfully disconnects from Hashem? I don't want to do that. That thought process is something you can do any time. And therefore says the Alter Rebbe, there's never a moment when you can't make a choice to be a Beinoni. Whether you'll be your whole life, separate story, we hope you will. And we hope you're strong enough to do that. But right now you can choose. Rasha, foolish, wicked Rasha, disconnect from Hashem, or Beinoni, self-control. That's always available to everybody anywhere. This is the first thing the Alter Rebbe tells us to actually do. After 13 chapters of telling us what things are, what's a Beinoni, what's a Rasha, what's a mitzvah, what's a Torah, all the things we learned. Now he finally tells us the first thing. First thing is, every moment you can decide to self-control or not. And that's the challenge of life. Clear? That's the first thing the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 14. Then the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 14 like this. He goes back to the first thing he said in chapter 1. The first thing he said in chapter 1 was, he quoted the Gemara. And the Gemara says that before a neshama is born, the neshama takes 3 vows. It makes 3 promises. It says, I'm not going to be wicked. It says, I'm going to be a tzaddik. And then he says, even if everybody tells me I'm a tzaddik, I'm going to see myself as if I'm wicked. Right?
Yeah, but you just said that.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, even if you, do whatever you want in the animal soul, Shema doesn't feel it. You just said that you have 2 parts in yourself. So
yeah, but then that's a good point. You're saying, why does the neshama feel the sin?
Yeah.
Because the neshama is inside the animal soul and inside your body. So even if it's not doing the sin, it's dragged into it.
I know, but
This is what's called, the neshama is going into galut, into exile. What's exile? Exile is you go to a place where you don't want to be. And that's what happens to the godly soul when a person does a sin. It goes to a place it doesn't want to go.
I know, but so
Follow?
Yeah, I know. So we asked you, should we feel hypocrites for doing an avera? You said there was 2 different parts.
That's right.
So
You don't feel a hypocrite, but you feel terrible for the godly soul. Poor guy got dragged into the sin, didn't want to go there.
yeah,
You following? It's a subtle thing. Meaning a hypocrite, you know what a hypocrite is like? Do you know why I say not to feel like a hypocrite? Because if you feel like a hypocrite, then when you do a mitzvah, you're going to feel like your mitzvah is worthless. You know why it's worthless? Because yesterday I did a sin. And that's why it's a mistake to feel like a hypocrite. Because that's your Yetzer Hara playing a trick on you. Oh, your mitzvah is worthless because yesterday you did a sin. It's not true. Yesterday I did a sin because the animal soul did that. And the godly soul didn't like it, but it went there anyway because I had no choice. And now the godly soul is finally doing what it wants. Why is it a hypocrite? You understand what I'm saying? That's why I'm saying, even though it's true, there's 2 opposite parts to me, and even while I'm doing a sin, there's some part of me that doesn't want to do it. My godly soul doesn't want to do it. But nonetheless, it doesn't take away from the fact that tomorrow when I do a mitzvah, it's a real mitzvah. Because my godly soul is doing it. And the godly soul is not the hypocrite, because while it was sinning, it didn't want to sin. It had no choice. It was in exile there. Following? Okay. So now getting back to what I was saying before. We say, this is partially from chapter 13 also, and chapter 14. But we say like this. We said that when before a person is born, he has to take 3 vows. I'm not going to be wicked, I'm going to be a tzaddik, and no, first he says I'm going to be a tzaddik, and then he says I'm not going to be wicked, and then he says even if everybody tells you you're a tzaddik, you should think that you're wicked. That's like you're wicked. Without your knowledge, yeah. It's a good question, and the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, explains that the word for vow in Hebrew is shvuah. Right? The word shvuah could also mean sovea, which means to satisfy. Which means it's not just that you took a vow, but actually in Shemayim they gave you strength. They satisfied you. They filled you up with strength to be able to do these things. To do 3 things. Number 1, be a tzaddik. Number 2, be a rasha. Don't be a rasha. Number 3, even if everybody tells you you're a rasha, even if everybody tells you you're a tzaddik, you should see yourself as if you're a rasha. Yeah? Sorry?
It's not free will if I'm taking vows without taking a vow.
Yeah, it's not free will. I mean, Neshama is born, it's not free will. Before it's born. We actually say, right, the Mishnah says you're born against your will. It's not free will that you're born. You're right?
No.
1 second. Let's get to this point here. So, now let's try to understand, now that we learned these last chapters, let's try to understand these 3 levels of the vow. First it says, the first vow is, I should be a tzaddik. Hold on a second. Didn't we say that you can't be a tzaddik, you can only be a Beinoni? So why are you taking the vow to be a tzaddik? So explains the Alter Rebbe. Even though you can't be a tzaddik, Not that you spend your whole life doing it. Because if you spend your whole life trying to be a tzaddik, you're going to fail and you're going to feel terrible about yourself because you're not going to get there. You're not going to get to the point where you don't feel we don't feel your animal soul. But says the Alter Rebbe, every now and again you could make yourself feel that way. When you pray, your love for Hashem is so great that your animal soul is sleeping, at least for that hour, and you could push yourself even further if you wanted to. You can start thinking how terrible sin is, and at least in some way start to feel what it means to be disgusted by the idea of doing sin. Right? If you thought about, for a long time, you spent an hour long straight thinking about the fact that every time I sin, I'm hurting Hashem, then slowly but surely you would feel by the idea of doing that. Right? So even though 10 minutes later your animal soul is going to come back and you're not going to mind doing sin, maybe you'll self-control, but at least your feelings will want to do a sin. But at least you did your part to try to create some part of your life that feels like it doesn't want to sin. And that's the first part of the vow. Ti tzaddik. Try to do your best to get to that level. You can't get there, at least al ti rasha, at least don't be wicked. So when the vow says be a tzaddik and don't be wicked, it's not a double expression of the same vow. It's actually two different vows. One vow is try your best to be a tzaddik. Oh, you can't get there? At least don't be wicked. Be a beinoni. At least self-control. You can't get to the point of a tzaddik where you only feel for God and don't feel for animal soul. Okay, you can't get there. Fine. You tried, you can't get there. At least don't be wicked. At least be a beinoni and do self-control. Following? Now the third thing. Even if everybody tells you you're a tzaddik, why? Let's say a person actually makes it to being a beinoni. So from everybody else is looking at him, he doesn't look different than a tzaddik. Because a tzaddik does everything right, and so does a beinoni do everything right. So everybody's telling this guy, you're a tzaddik. What should you think? I'm not a tzaddik, I'm only a beinoni. He doesn't say, Yeh beinecha ki rasha. You should see yourself as if you're a rasha. Not that you're actually wicked, because you know you never did a sin. But you should think yourself close to a rasha because you're a beinoni. And a beinoni is always 1 inch away from being a rasha. A tzaddik is not close to being a rasha. Because a tzaddik doesn't feel, his animal soul doesn't feel selfish, so he's never about to do a sin. But a beinoni, at any moment he can do a sin. You follow? Following? If he's a tzaddik, then he should think that he's capable of sinning, even though really he's not. He should think he's capable of sinning. And by thinking you're capable of sinning, that will help you stay away from sin. In other words, like this. It's possible, think of it this way. Imagine you get to the point where there was a certain negative bad behavior you had, a certain bad pattern. And you spent months and months and months working to stop it. Okay, you guys are a little bit young, but an example of this is somebody who used to smoke. Somebody who was a smoker. And then one day decides to quit. So he quits. It's very, very tough to quit because he's addicted to it for a long time. But after months and years, he doesn't want it as much anymore. Right? If he starts to think, it's no big deal, I'm not addicted to cigarettes anymore, I'll just take one. What happens? He goes right back to his old habits. So part of staying away from doing bad things is to remember that you're capable of doing it. Because the moment you think you're not capable of doing the bad things, you're not going to take it to heart. You're going to take it very lightly and say, oh, no big deal. Right? It's like a person's trying to control himself on what he sees on his phone, let's say. And he works hard at controlling himself. And he thinks, I'm safe. I can go to that website and I'm not going to do anything. Terrible idea. Don't do that. So by remembering that you're capable of doing sin, remembering that you're a beinoni, you're not a tzaddik, remembering that you're always at any moment like that, and that's the vow. Even if everybody tells you you're a tzaddik, you should see yourself as if you're wicked. You should see yourself that you're capable of sinning at any moment. And by remembering that you're capable of sinning, you will remember to employ your self-control and not give in. Following? Yeah. So let's go through those 3 stages again. First vow is, you try your best to be a tzaddik. You try your best to get to the point where all you want is serve Hashem. Okay, you can't do that, at least don't be wicked. At least do self-control like a beinoni. But even when you're doing self-control, remember, you're always capable of doing a sin. Because the moment you think you're not capable of it, you're going to lower your guard down, and you'll end up, chas v'shalom, falling in. Clear? That's chapter 14. What time is it now? I think we have time for... You have a... Sorry? No? Not when it's playing live, it doesn't show the time. Okay, we have time for chapter 15. Chapter 15 is a beautiful chapter. It's 10:45. Chapter 15 is a very beautiful chapter. And he says like this. Because we've been talking about the fact that the Beinoni is all about a fight. That's what the Beinoni is all about. He's fighting. He's fighting during prayer to get feelings for Hashem. He's got to think about it. He's got to connect. He's got to work hard. Right? And he's got to fight all day long to self-control. Right? That's what the Beinoni is all about. The Beinoni is a man who fights. He's a fighter. He's a soldier for Hashem. Really, he's got to fight. It's a hard, tough fight inside. Right? Right? You know the famous Mishnah, Ezehu Gibor, who is a strong one? HaKovesh et Yitzro, one who controls his inclination. Right? If I really want to hit somebody, hitting him is very easy. What's much stronger and harder is to control myself. Right? And that's the Beinoni. All day long he's doing self-control. It's a big fight. All for his whole life he's fighting and fighting and fighting. Says the Alter Rebbe, the importance of the fight is so important that it's very possible for somebody who is, he doesn't use these words, but this is the words I like to use. He's a technical Beinoni. Technically he's a Beinoni. Who's that? Who's a technical Beinoni?
That's what we said. That's equal to what we said.
Well, Beinoni is someone who never does sin, right? So what do I mean by technically a Beinoni? I mean, he's the kind of guy who's a bookworm. So by birth, he's not such a warm-blooded guy. He doesn't care so much for enjoying good food. Doesn't care so much for sports. Doesn't care so much to hang out the way teenagers like to hang out. He's not the kind of guy. He's the kind of guy who likes he's a bookworm. He likes to read. And because he's born religious, what does he read?
Torah.
He reads Torah all day. So does he ever sin? No. Does he do what he's supposed to? Yep. He ever waste time from Torah study? Nope. He's always studying Torah. But did he put up a fight for it? Didn't put up a fight. So that's why I say he's a technical Beinoni. He's technically a Beinoni because he technically didn't break any of the rules. But did he put up a fight like a Beinoni of self-control? Nah. So says the Alter Rebbe, this guy is not considered Hashem's servant. He's not even a tzaddik.
Yes, because
it's a good point. A tzaddik is somebody whose animal soul is also serving Hashem. This is not a guy whose animal soul is also serving Hashem. His animal soul likes to read, so he happens to be reading.
no, but you said that also tzaddik is the animal soul is inactive.
Oh, it's inactive, not because it's inactive technically. It's inactive because he loves Hashem so much. Because he loves Hashem so much, therefore it's inactive. Does this guy love Hashem so much?
Yes,
He doesn't say love Hashem so much. He never put any effort to love Hashem. Loving Hashem doesn't happen by birth. To love Hashem, you have to really connect and think and work and create love. He doesn't love Hashem. He's just a cold-blooded guy. He's not so hot. He's one of those guys who's just a bookworm. If he was born to an religious family, he'd be a professor. And because he's born to a religious family, he became a rabbi.
I know,
But he didn't do anything to really work for Hashem. I'll put it this way. The Alter Rebbe puts it like this. There's a difference between, what's the difference between someone who is wise and someone who, a chacham versus a Talmud chacham? He doesn't use this example, but it's similar. What's the difference? A Talmud chacham is someone who's working at studying, trying to gain wisdom. So right now he's in the process of earning that wisdom. And a chacham is what? Already has the wisdom. Right? So the tzaddik is like the chacham. He already has the love for Hashem so much that his animal soul is inactive. This guy never did that. He never did that. He never created love for Hashem. And the fact that his animal soul is asleep is technically speaking. Because his animal soul isn't such a strong one. Yeah.
First he's going to feel something. He's going to feel something about...
Very little, without much work. Maybe a little bit. He'll feel something, but not really. For example, there's a difference between, there's animal soul, right? But there's different kind of animals. There's cows, there's oxen, there's sheep, there's goats. All different types of animal souls. Some people are more hyper animal souls, some are more calm, some have more energy, some have less energy. And this is the kind of guy, he's a soft sheep.
How do you know which animal soul you
You can tell by your personality. You like to burn off energy? Then you're probably not a sheep type animal soul. You're probably much more like a... Sorry?
Is there a way to know?
You have to really talk to someone who knows you well.
Like a lion.
You know?
Nah,
You have to have, in Chabad, there's something called a mashpia. You know what a mashpia is? Mashpia means someone who influences, like a personal rabbi. It's like the Mishnah says, Aseh lecha rab. You have to make yourself a personal rabbi, a guide, someone you can talk to. And that person can help you identify what kind of animal soul you have. But here the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 15 that there could be a person who's a technical Beinoni because that's just the way he is by birth. He never put up a fight.
What about the science? What's it called?
I think it's
That's a different story. Maybe we'll get to that another time.
But there's
It's possible. We'll get to that another time. Maybe we'll do that another time. The Gemara says about what the Gemara says about that. We'll get to that another time. But here we're talking like this. Let's finish this chapter here. So there's a guy who's a technical vanity because he's not so hot-blooded. He doesn't care so much for this world. He's not so into food. He's not so into sports. He's a bookworm. And he happens to be born religious. So he learns Torah all day, but he never put up a fight one day in his life. He didn't put up a fight to try to create love for Hashem, and he didn't put up a fight to try to control himself. So says the Alter Rebbe, this guy, right, he might be technically on a higher level than you. But in truth, who's really serving Hashem here? Who's truly serving Hashem? Who's truly a worker for Hashem? That guy's not working.
But he had the choice to.
That's true.
He had the choice to read either math.
That's true. He has a choice between. That's true. So it's not like he's doing nothing. He's not doing nothing. He's certainly in the service of Hashem, but he's not really a servant. The guy who's fighting and working, he's putting in effort for Hashem. In other words, Alter was telling us that the Beinoni is not so much about the technicalities if you're sinning or not. The Beinoni is all about, are you fighting for Hashem or not? That's the big question. Are you fighting? And the fighting, that's the real Beinoni. And it's so important to fight for Hashem, says the Alter Rebbe, that if this guy happens to be a technical Beinoni because he's a bookworm and learning all day, he should also fight. How should he fight? Learn more than he wants. If he likes to learn for an hour, okay, learn for an hour and 10 minutes. He likes to read a book 100 times, read it 110 times. The Alter Rebbe quotes a story in the Gemara, which the Gemara uses, sorry? The donkey?
No, I think it's the guy who it was hard for him to read 101 times.
Yes, exactly. The Gemara talks about people who used to read 100 times, and they pushed to 101 times. Then that one extra time is counted as if it equal to the whole 100. And the Gemara gives an example Imagine you are today we don't have donkeys walking around the street, but imagine you own 10 donkeys and your job that's your business. You rent out donkeys. But you know your donkey's strength, right? And your donkeys can walk comfortably for 10 miles. They're comfortable walking 10 miles. So you charge everybody, a 10-mile walk costs $10. You want to take my donkey for 11 miles? Okay, now it's $20. Why is it double the price for one extra mile? Because you're pushing the donkey more than it used to. The truth is it's similar to car rentals. Car rentals, a lot of times, they rent by the mile. How many miles are you going to be driving? Okay. Or let's say you pay per day, but when you pay per day, you only pay for a certain amount of miles per day. How many miles of driving? As soon as you go over that miles of driving, the price goes way up. Why? Because they know their car, and they know their car is going to stay safe, and the engine is going to stay well if you keep under a certain amount of miles for driving. As soon as you go over those miles, you push the car too much, okay, we got to charge you more. So you see that even doing a tiny drop more than you're used to is worth as much as everything you're used to. And therefore these guys who used to study it for 100 times, how do they push themselves? By learning one extra time. And this is what the Rebbe says here. If you're a technical Beinoni, fighting for Hashem is so important that if it's easy for you to just learn all day long and not sin, then learn more than you're used to. You like to learn for an hour and 5 minutes. And this is a general rule. It's a rule not just for the technical Beinoni, but for everybody. The main thing is to be fighting for Hashem. It's life for sure, but I'm saying even for serving Hashem. A Beinoni is somebody who fights for Hashem. So first of all, the Beinoni's got to fight for self-control. But then there are some times where you get to a certain point where a certain sin is not such a challenge anymore. You still have to remember you're capable of sinning, like we learned before. Remember you're capable, because if you think you're not capable, you're going to lower your guard down, and chas v'shalom, you might slip into doing that sin. But the Alter Rebbe is telling us that you always have to look for a fight. Look to push yourself. Not just, okay, I did what it said. The Shulchan Aruch said I did everything right. Check. I'm done. That's called serving Hashem. Serving Hashem means you're putting up a fight. Serving Hashem means you're working hard. So if you find these things easy, find something that's hard and push it. So how does tzaddik fight? Very good question. I don't know the answer, because this is the book for the Beinoni, not for the book for the tzaddik. But I'm sure that tzaddik also has.
He has really. If you think about it, he's kind of like that guy there who reads.
Not exactly, because the tzaddik actually does fight, but a different kind of fighting. The tzaddik doesn't have to fight with doing sin or pushing himself to learn more. The tzaddik has to fight internally. This is what I read somewhere, that the tzaddik has to fight to get rid of the I love Hashem. I love Hashem. He's trying to get rid of the I. That's how high his fight is. But that's something so out of my world that I can't even tell you.
If you think about it, Moshe, he really Egypt, and he really didn't have the time to study and whatever. So he was born tzaddik when
he was chosen by Hashem to be, right when he was born, the room filled with light when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, right?
So where is the effort there? Where was the effort?
Where was his effort?
Yeah.
I'm sure. I don't know. It's hard for me to understand how a tzaddik works because I'm not a tzaddik. It's very hard for me to imagine somebody who has to put effort when he doesn't have an animal soul, or his animal soul is not active. Like I don't know what that means. It's very hard for me to understand. But I could think of places in my life. I'll give you an example. Like for me, I don't struggle not to eat not kosher. I don't have to fight for it. You know, if I walk down the street and I see a restaurant that's not kosher, whatever, it's not in my right. So I have to find other areas to push myself. Maybe it's hard for me to concentrate for the whole 45 minutes of davening. It's hard to pray, concentrate. So there's a place I have to put a fight up. But somebody else who, let's say, one time wasn't religious, and for them, they once upon a time did eat not kosher. Now every single time that person walks on the street, he has to fight to control himself not to go into the restaurant. Right? So who is the greater servant of Hashem? Maybe I'm more religious than him. Maybe I did more things that I have a beard, right? Let's say that guy doesn't have a beard yet. So I'm holier because I do more things that the Shulchan Aruch says to do. But am I putting up a fight? You know how much fight and self-control it requires for him not to go into that restaurant? Am I putting a quarter of that energy into my prayer? So who's really fighting for Hashem? Who's really serving Hashem? That's what we're talking about here. And that's really what it means to be Beinoni. It's another element of the Beinoni. Beinoni, number one, is fighting for self-control. Number two, during prayer, he has to inspire himself to feel love for Hashem. Number three, what we learned today in chapter 14 of Tanya, it doesn't matter what he felt yesterday, it doesn't feel tomorrow. At every single moment, you are capable of doing self-control, because at every single moment you can tell yourself, do you want to be a wicked fool disconnecting from Hashem? Or do you rather control yourself? Every moment you have that choice. And now we're in chapter 15, that it's so important to put up a fight for Hashem, that if you find it easy to serve Hashem, find ways that you can push and fight. Because what's important is that you're working for Hashem, that you're putting in effort, not that you're technically doing what you have to. But putting in the effort is where it's all at. And therefore, if you find it easy, then push yourself. Learn a little bit more. Find a mitzvah that's hard for you to do, and get good at it. You like to give only $10 tzedakah, give $11. Push yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you said there, you read a lot.
Yeah.
And helping your parents, for example.
It could be a hard thing for some people.
Yes, like even if he studies all day, does that count or something?
Right. So if he studies all day long, and it's hard for him to help his parents, then maybe he should start helping. And that way, he's gonna be a real working for Hashem. He's really pushing himself. He's pushing his nature. By nature, he likes to sit in his room and ignore his parents. Right? That's his nature. But he's gonna fight because he wants to serve Hashem, and he's gonna get off his lazy couch and go help his parents. That's gonna be really putting up a fight for Hashem. For sure. And that's what's most precious. That's what's most important, is the effort you're putting into fighting. Not just if you're following all the rules. Following all the rules is important. But what's even more important is that you're fighting, that you're putting in some effort, that you're really working for Hashem. Follow? Okay. So that's chapter 14 and 15. Is that Hashem Monday, we'll do 16 and 17, which is going to be another part of the Beinoni, but in some way it's actually going to make it easier for us. Chapter 16 is going to make it easier for us. 17 a little bit harder. And then we'll get into later things.